Hi everyone, it's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. I'm super excited to introduce you to Colleen Nelson. Hi Colleen, how are you doing?
Hi. Good, I'm great this morning.
Good. So I met Colleen, I'm a big fan of hers on Instagram, and I came across her through a mutual connection, Jackie Carr, and fell in love with her content, her stories. I listen to you like daily. You always give such great advice. So Colleen is a trauma therapist and a relationship coach out of Colorado, Fort Collins, Colorado. So Colleen, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So I am, as I said, I'm a trauma therapist. So I have my license to practice therapy here in Colorado, and I have a passion actually to take therapy and make it more accessible and relatable. And so I have pivoted kind of to the online realm, which brought me into the relationship coach field this last year. It's like my identity is continuing to evolve as I get into this realm. I find myself redefining often, which I love, but it's also it's also a fun game.
Right.
Am I a relationship coach today, or am I a boundary coach, or am I an empowerment coach? Like, what is that special word that you use to really, express what you're doing? But I would say trauma therapist will forever and always be part of my title.
Cool. And you because you also talk about it from a business standpoint. You've brought on people that have helped you out with your business. I've seen that online. Like you've been offering some coaching and some tools and resources for your clients or people that want to sign up and work with you around business and like sort of relaunching and redefining yourself.
Absolutely. Yes. So if you think about it, this is why I called it relationship coach: relationship to self, relationship to others, and relationship to business. So the program I run helps with each and every one of those categories. I just tailor it to whatever group I'm running, and kind of shift into that space of really coming into your own true self, which helps with business mindset, helps in relationship with your intimate partner, and then helps with your own self-discovery.
For sure. And we were talking earlier, one of the things that what pulled me into following you and then wanting you to come on Three Uniques is you had taken over Jackie's Instagram for the day, and you were talking about boundaries.
Yeah.
And you were walking us through an acronym that you use for boundaries. And we probably don't have time for you to do it, but I mean, I'm going to encourage people to go check out your feed, and we'll make sure that but before we end, we'll talk about where to find you. But can you give us a little bit of a highlight? How has boundaries been really important, I guess, for people that you're working with right now, especially with kind of what we're all going through, COVID, economic recession, job loss?
To be honest, I think most every issue, maybe I would say, that I deal with my clients on a day-to-day basis can be brought back to a boundary issue, whether it's a boundary with yourself or a boundary with others. It's our inability to be able to express that solid hell yes and that solid absolutely no. We struggle with the in-between, and a lot of influences like scarcity and fear and trauma and what we're going through, right? It's really difficult to hold a boundary in so many different capacities, and that incongruence inside of us creates a lot of mental health issues. And so boundaries come back to really understanding where true power and control belongs, which is inside each and every one of us rather than external from us. So it shows up everywhere.
Yes. And on social media, comparison. I always say comparison is the death of joy.
Yes.
So be careful, monitor your intake, follow people that really inspire you, lift you up. Again, it's folks like yourself. I'm very hesitant now about who I follow because it shows up in my feed. And even though I want to, tap into people that are following me and understand what they're coming from, I'm very cautious about who I follow now and, what influences even just sort of percolate in my mind. So someone like yourself is great because your daily doses that you put on your stories always lift me up or could lift anybody up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really think competition, comparison they just steal that inner light and that desire to do something with your voice. And I say lean towards collaboration. That's not for everybody. That's a yes in the direction of bringing that person closer to you. Sometimes it needs to be a no so that you can recalibrate and kind of build up your own internal landscape before you can collaborate with somebody who may not necessarily poke you in the right way. So it's always a question mark in my mind to get curious. And that's what I think is the most important piece about boundaries, is you've got to get really curious about what's coming up for you, so that when you put a boundary down, you know why, and you can hold it regardless of the feedback that you get. And social media is part of that, right? It's constant.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'll let you finish your sip of coffee, because we're filming early in the morning. I'm drinking tea, you're drinking coffee. We got to keep it in there.
Yeah.
So you're here to share your 3 uniques with us. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious. You use the word curious, and that's like one of my 3 uniques. So I'm really curious about your 3 uniques.
Okay. So I am a co-author.
Mm-hmm.
I am an educator.
Okay.
And I am consistently inspired.
Nice. All right. Let's hear about co-author. Right, I read at the top.
So I'm a co-author of, I would say, I picked that phrase because I'm an actual co-author of a book, The Modern Man's Guide to Divorce. It literally will be launching in the next week. It's in editing and finishing up here, which is amazing.
So exciting.
And I co-author a lot of different programs, a lot of different classes. I really am very interested in continued collaboration. I love co-authoring my life with others. And so I think about how I show up as a professional, as a therapist, and as a human. And I'm always looking at how I can take your voice and make it louder, and build you up, and also kind of collaborate with my own special gifts, just to make it even more comprehensive. So being a co-author is a huge component of everything I do.
That's amazing. And where can we find your book when it comes out?
So it will be, I will put it on Instagram to download. It's an ebook. So you can find it on like Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It'll be hosted on what's called Smashwords, but they post it everywhere. I will put the link in my bio on Instagram as well as on my website.
Okay, great. Yeah, and you're co-authored it. I've seen the gentleman that you have a like separate, or I've seen his Instagram where he's talking about sort of life of a divorced man and what that sort of process looks like.
Yes.
So what inspired you to write that book and also be in collaboration with somebody else to do it?
Yeah, so Ryan, his name's Ryan McElroy. He is a fabulous human. Let's just say that out loud. And he's also Canadian. All the Canadians. And he found me because I did before COVID, therapeutic retreats where I took people internationally and we did therapeutic experiences while also traveling. And he, at that time, was a business owner of one of the wellness retreat centers. And he kind of approached me with the business idea and said, hey, I want a therapist perspective on this. And I love the work that you do and the angle you come at with the trauma work. Really direct, really no nonsense. And we really need that with a group, with a book for men. And I was like, absolutely, I would love this. Side note, he didn't know this at the time, but I was actually in the middle of a divorce myself.
Okay.
And we'll call him my husband because that's the term now. He was my husband.
Okay.
We're doing a conscious uncoupling. So we have a very, very healthy uncoupling that's happening. And in talking with him, he was very inspired about the book as well, because he just didn't have a community to go to. I mean, I had all of these different groups and all of this different support. I have my own little First Wives Club.
Right.
And, you know, Mike had nothing. And so this was inspired by my ex-husband, you know, and what he really needed and couldn't find. So it's a combination of Ryan coming to me, Mike going through the divorce without support, and really trying to figure out how to, again, co-author and contribute to this book in a real and meaningful way.
That's so cool. That's great. And I love the terminology husband.
Isn't it great? I know, because ex sounds so harsh. Not that it doesn't need to be that, but husband comes from that book, Conscious Uncoupling. So
okay. Okay, cool. I'm divorced as well, and I typically say my children's father.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I like that
too. So again, not to put an X beside it, because it just sort of like diminishes. And no, we had like great years together. We raised 2 amazing daughters. Like, I'm not going to discredit the marriage at all, even though we went through our decision to separate. So
absolutely. Yeah, I think it helps when you're describing it to others, and it also helps when you're talking to your partner. And I think that's that terminology is fun too. Husband. I kind of want like a coffee mug. It's like, we need one for like wife, like, you know, we'll have to figure out.
We'll have to figure that one out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that one will be.
Well, it could just be goddess. How about that?
Yeah, I like, ooh, yes, girl, yes.
I just want to like actually reduce any, you know, any sort of any other titles that women have except for goddess, like just women plus goddess. There you go.
Yep. I love it.
Okay.
I love all of it.
Okay, and your second unique?
My second unique is educator.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an educator of specifically trauma. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I think about putting the word trauma educator before it, which we can throw that in there. Maybe after I describe it, you can tell me what you think. I am incredibly passionate about speaking and educating on trauma. Like, probably top of my list of things that I love to talk about would be that. People get a little afraid of the word trauma, probably because it's a little misunderstood. We think of like the big, violent, awful acts in our world as traumatic, but the simple act of breaking up, or, you know, in middle school, someone not allowing you to sit at the lunch table is also traumatic. It's a little t trauma, but it still affects our body in a similar way.
Right.
And I just feel like we need more education on it. And I love the idea of continuing to speak on it, like for the rest of my life, and helping us all become educated on what's going on in our bodies and our minds and why we do what we do.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you mentioned like the little T at the lunchroom table. Probably when that happened, it was a big T, because that's like the context that we're dealing with, right? And so then our brain just adopts that, and anything that comes after that is always a big T.
It is. Yeah, it's whatever our body believes is a threat to our survival. And, you know, we're primates, so anything that makes us feel like we don't belong is a threat to our survival. Right. So if we think about that, like, there's a lot of different things that we've encountered in our lives that make us feel like we don't belong. And, you know, even just emotional neglect, like you wouldn't even think that it's emotional neglect is a message to our brain, like, you're not enough, right? Like, you're not worthy of my attention and energy at this time. And so it affects our nervous system, and it affects our brain, and it gets in the way of us wanting to make the changes we want to make in the world. You know, one of the things I do is I certify coaches, mentors, healers, like the world out there that's doing this work. I certify them in trauma-informed care, and do a lot of speaking workshops and masterclasses and events, because I want everybody to have some sort of foundational background. So if it comes up in business coaching, if it comes up in a, you know, alignment seminar, like, they understand, like, oh, okay, I may not have training as a therapist, but I can work from this module and this perspective, and I have these resources, so I can speak to this. Because I think that this is a category people are so scared of.
Yes.
Comes up, we just pivot away. And it's like, you know, you can only say I am worthy enough times in the mirror before you get upset with yourself, because you don't actually feel it in your body and you don't know what's wrong with you.
Right.
And it's like, well, you know, we can change our beliefs, but if there's a trauma story tied to it, we've also got to do that work. And if we don't, it's just not going to shift in the way we want it to, per se.
Yeah. I think you bring up a really great point too, that I'd look to stay on a little bit more. And then I want to hear about your third unique, as I always have to, like, because I get so interested in what people have to say. Yeah. This is the whole thing that's great for me when I interview people. It's like, wow, I get all these different perspectives. So I think the other thing too that I'm seeing in workplaces is leaders are getting confronted with this with their employees, obviously all going, again, just the recency of this past year, or rolling, you know, 10, 11 months that we've all been kind of going through, is that, you know, leaders before had to be equipped on, like, how do you lead your business and how do you lead your team in the business? And now there's this component, and it's been there, and we've been talking about mental health in the workplace more authentically, say, in the last like 3 to 5 years, I in my mind. Before that, it was like, yeah, you know, go call your employee assistance program. But now it's like we're realizing, I think, as leaders in business, that we do need to understand that a bit more and be more compassionate to our employees when they're going through something. At the same time, our leaders even skilled in recognizing when our employees going through some type of trauma-based like trigger, and it's in the workplace, it's over Zoom when we're all working remote right now, and in these virtual work environments, like leaders are confronted with it and they don't know how to address it. You know, and they may sense some early signs of it, they may see it, but they don't know how to like bring it up with an employee, like, hey, are you okay? Like, what do you need? Like, do we need to, you know, do I need to get some resources for you? Do I need to call HR, talk to the benefits providers, et cetera, see what's available to you?
Oh, and sometimes, Brenda, and this is the most powerful thing, is someone in a traumatic state, if we ask them questions, they're in fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah,
They're
like,
just
okay, I'm fine.
they can't even identify what they need. So knowing ahead of time, like, this is what you need. Like, we're gonna go walk outside, we're gonna take 10 deep breaths. I'm gonna ask you to name 5 things you see, 4 things you smell, 3 things that you taste, like, and knowing, like, we're gonna do this. And then I'm going to walk you back to your office. And here is a packet of resources, or here's a worksheet that I want you to take home with you. It talks a little bit about what's going on with your body. It talks a little bit about what's happening here for you. And then when you're ready to talk to someone, here's these resources. Here's HR, here's a therapist, because sometimes the scariest part about trauma is we don't actually understand it. Right? I say anxiety is actually the fear of fear. Like, you wouldn't, if a grizzly bear like popped into your room right now and you got that feeling in your body.
On Saturday mornings, but you know, I'll go with it.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh, like, I'm afraid. Like, that's fear. Like, I feel fear in my body. Yeah. But if you looked at your purple pillow and you felt that feeling, you would be like, okay, I don't understand why I'm afraid. That's anxiety, right? Because anxiety is, we don't quite understand what's going on in our body.
Right.
So I think for leaders and coaches and bosses, like, to have those answers so people feel seen, heard, and there's a solution. Because it feels weird to give someone a solution in a traumatic state, but they do need a body-based solution to get them out of trauma land.
Right.
To give them that, they can pull their frontal cortex, their higher consciousness back on, and then utilize the resources and then answer those questions.
Right.
And I think we all freeze when someone's having a panic attack, or we freeze when someone's showing signs of distress because we're not really sure how to step in.
Right.
And just those simple tools can be incredibly impactful in someone's life. They don't have to be their therapist in that moment, but they can get them out of a disassociated state and save all sorts of impending consequences that could occur.
I think just even this short little conversation that we're having right now is a great little snippet tool. Like, hey, leaders, like, have these tools in front of you. And if you don't have access to them right now, call your HR person, call your benefits, you know, provider that your company has, and get those tools and just have them handy in your desk, or get ahead of it and even just circulate them to your employees beforehand and just say, hey, do you know, like, we all sign up for our benefits program, but do you know that, you know, it offers this?
Yes, absolutely. Demystifying counseling, really helping people understand that, like, therapy looks different for everyone. And I think that's also, you know, it's hard to ask for support and help. And it's one of those things that I would love to, again, demystify and make more accessible all over the world, you know, depending on where you live. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to access, but it's crucial, an absolutely crucial part of us recovering from this pandemic as well.
Thank you so much for sharing and just taking a little bit more extra time on it.
Yeah. Oh, I told you, it's my favorite thing to talk about.
That's awesome. And your third unique?
Consistently inspired.
Yeah. Okay. So what's that all about?
I am a seeker of all things knowledge. Like, I always want to be inspired. I mean, like, daily. It is something that I feel like I have my passion, I have my niche, I have the things I love to do, but there is just something really profound about waking up and reading a line in a book, or pulling up Instagram and seeing someone's quote that makes me, I feel like, operate on a different level. Like, if I'm going to inspire, I need to be consistently inspired. So I'm constantly seeking that out. And that's kind of where I lean towards collaboration over competition, because, you know, if I'm triggered by you, Jackie's one of them. I'll go with Jackie. Jackie, I was watching her Instagram and I was just like, oh, wow, this woman is an amazing speaker. I love to speak. I love being on stage, but whoa, she commands a room. She commands a room. And it's like, you know, that imposter syndrome starts to creep up, and I'm like, boom, signing up for her 12, messaging her on Instagram. I'm going to do a live. Here we go. I move towards those that intimidate me because I want to be inspired. I want to be around their energy and their power. I just invested in a woman, her name's Shoshana Raven, and she does business alignment and wealth management and like money. Woo, it's a scary topic for money. And I was like, okay, I'm scared of money. Woo, deep dive, like move towards it.
Cool.
And so that's a really active piece of who I am.
I love that. Just your whole visual of diving in. It's like whatever you're afraid of, wherever that imposter syndrome is coming up, deep dive into it more. I love that. I did that a couple of years ago too when I was going through my divorce. I went to Tony Robbins' live session. He came out to Vancouver and he had all these amazing speakers. And there was a gentleman that talked about money. And obviously I was going through divorce and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be like living in a tent with my kids. And never mind the fact that I have this like professional legacy and this amazing career and I know how to make money. And I've like, worked in executive roles where I know I pull in a great salary. But in that moment, I was just like, I'm going to be living in a tent with my kids and our dog. And 6 months later, we're probably going to be eating the dog. And like, I was just like, it was like the worst possible scenario.
Oh, yeah.
So we talked about money. And then he was like, sign up for my course. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. And my friends that were with me, they're just like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm totally doing this. I don't know how to talk about money, or I didn't back then, in a way that lifted me up. For me, money was always like from that scarcity mindset, whether it was like generational beliefs, that generational legacy that got pulled forward, grandparents, great-grandparents that came over from like the old country in Europe and left everything behind, living through 2 world wars, etc. Like all that sort of belief of scarcity came with me, along with caution, risk adversity, not making investments into myself. So now it's definitely switched where it's like same thing. It's like, if there's someone that inspires me, it's like sign up for their course, get coaching from them, invest in myself. It always lifts me up and I always get the payback. Always.
Absolutely, Brenda. And it's once you do it, you realize the payback is tenfold. Yeah. It's scary. I consistently invest more money in my coaches, and when I tell people the price ticket, they're like, oh, I'm like, oh no, that's cheap. Like, you don't understand the value I'm getting out of this. Like, it's a big deal. And then you join that group of amazing folks who are investing in themselves, and just being around that dynamic and that energy is inspiring in itself. I mean, the 12 with Jackie was life-giving in 2020. Like, it was life-giving.
Makes me want to move to Colorado.
Yes, well, she's doing ones now. She's doing cycles of 12 weeks with national and international.
Very cool. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
So check her out.
Okay, and then there's also all your programs too, which I want to make sure that we mention.
I know. You look at me, I'm like promoting Jackie and promoting Shoshana. I'm like,
that's great. Well, and I also think as women business owners, like, we have to do that, right? Someone helped give us a leg up to get to where we are today. And I'm always about like, how can I help other women entrepreneurs? I want to help men too, but more especially right now, women. In Canada, the stat is that I'm like wrestling with is 1 in 3 Canadian women are dropping out of their jobs right now because of COVID and childcare issues. The US has also staggering stats as well.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I read a statistic that said something about like the job loss being 100% women in like one of the statistics. And I can't quote it accurately right now. Men are losing their jobs too. So let's say that out loud. That is not, not happening, but it's just, it's staggeringly, the gap is huge.
Yeah, and significantly with women of color as well. That's the other thing that's really alarming. They're saying it's setting back women in their jobs by 3 decades.
Yeah, yes.
So whatever we've been building for the last 3 decades, poof, gone.
I know. I don't know, are you on Clubhouse?
Yes, I just started.
Yes, so I was listening, I'm part of a club on Clubhouse called Women in Business. It's run by a group of 3 women of color. And I highly, highly suggest following their club. I'll invite you. If you follow me back on Clubhouse, I can nominate you to be part of the group. They're incredible and are helping, in particular, women of color, like re-elevate. And I think when we're losing 3 decades, but I think we can gain 5 if we all band together. And especially we as white women kind of take a step back and elevate those voices. I think it's crucially important. And I love what they're doing on Clubhouse right now. I will promote them all day, every day, because it's just free content and just brilliant.
Yeah, please invite me. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 last questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
When do you know you're fully living your 3 uniques? How do you know? Like what's...
I feel it in my body, head to toe.
Yeah.
It's like that warm, glowy feeling. And not only is it warm and glowy, but I see other people feel it as I come in contact with them. Like when I'm speaking, when I'm living in that space, like it's that magnetic energy where things just flow. They flow in, they flow out, and I can feel it to my core.
Awesome. That's cool. Thank you. And then what have you invested in the last 3 years that is giving you massive payoff?
Yeah, so I've kind of answered this, but the 12th with Jackie Carr, huge. Shoshana's Ravens, I just joined her mastermind. That's going to be insanely beneficial for me. And then a virtual assistant, Remote Liesel. She just completely took my business from only in-person private practice to online, and just and shifted it in 2020 in the course of like 9 months. It was incredible. So investing in a team was the most important part of what I did and do currently.
Amazing. Colleen, thank you so much for being on 3 Uniques today. I really appreciate chatting with you, connecting with you, and having you share your 3 Uniques with us.
Absolutely, Brenda. Thank you.
Take care. And everyone that's listening, just remember what I always say at the end of every interview. There's 7.5 billion people on this planet. Somebody needs what you've got. So keep sharing your 3 Uniques. Take care, everyone.